Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Game of the Max and the start of a new series on the channel, Hearts of Iron for Kaiserreich, the Russian Empire. So we're going to jump on in. This was what we have chose from the list that I had put out. We started the Russian Empire earlier on before I had to leave, and I never got to finish it. So it did have a large, substantial update since the last time I played it. But this did also just come out with a new patch, and it gave a new wiki. The Indian continent had been overhauled, and then you got some new portraits and everything. But the biggest thing is the different Indian factions have gotten not necessarily completely new ones. There's a lot of their old focus trees still there, but it's been most definitely expanded upon. As well as the Philippines. So, but we're going to play as the Russian Empire. Starts out with the Russian Republic, but we will hop on in and, oh, not historical AI. And we'll be on regular, like always. Deploying the Kaiserreich Marine. I absolutely love Kaiserreich. Kaiserreich is probably one of my favorite mods for Hearts of Iron 4. Always has been for a very long time. And it just continues to get better. So if you'd like to see, they offer path guides now when you come in. So we'll be going down, let's see, it's not Republic, the Empire right here. Usually I do social conservative because it does differ how you can do it. If you choose Ivan Silvovich as second in command, the force focuses plague of democratism and dictator of consciousness can be taken to become authoritarian and democrat and paternal autocrat. If you don't, you would stay with any of these three here. So usually I go social conservative, and the only real big thing is if you get rid of Kornilov, you have to replace him with Wrangel. So, and then you have to overthrow Savinkov's regime. So we're going to hit continue on that, and then we're going to start up. We're going to get to our regular research. Anytime we do Hearts of Iron, we're going to do the same three researches. Whoops. Bin construction one, and then your fourth one, you can do whatever. I'm going to do the Maxims and 82mm Minyomyat. And then, so Russia has this really weird type of MIO where you can get like field tests which grant medals to different regiments, and you'll get like, so it says like 10 attack, or you can just get 5 soft attack for them being built. So I've never done the medals because I don't think if you have hundreds of divisions that I don't necessarily agree that 4, unless you can do it multiple times, and maybe you can do it multiple times. I've just never done it, so we'll see. And then IMZ is just for like production efficiency gain. So I usually build it with IMZ here just for the production. You can also do one if it still has production resources needed -30%, which is pretty large, but you can't get production output cost or production efficiency and resources needed -5 if you do that one. So but really, you can get -35% needed with just those two. Then another -5%, which gives you -40. So I think you can end up with like -45%. So I'm gonna go with IMZ first for just that. Sorry, it's kind of long-winded there, but and then we're going to just find our best spots and start building up some civilian factories because we'll need them. We only start out with a good 15, so we're just gonna build. And if you want to know where you're going to get better build bonuses, it's going to be in the country or in the tiles that are of a different color green, because these will have higher infrastructure than some of the other ones around them. So, but yeah, so with that, this will kind of go through our decisions here in a little bit. We start out with Boris Semikov. We get entrenched opposition, which gives us -0.80 daily political power gain. The German economic influence, which gives us -8% war support, but plus 8% research speed, resources to market plus 30%, civilian industry to target country plus 21% to Germany, and our target country trade cost is negative 80% for Germany. So they can get cheaper stuff to us, and we have to put more stuff to the market, and then our factories are going to them instead of for us. So we own 50 factories, and they're getting a certain amount of our factories. So we're going to come in here. The only one we can start off with are the military ones. So we're immediately going to rush the Consolidate the Security Services, which gives us a political advisor that gives us political power gain plus 5%, resistance target negative 5%, and operative slot plus 1%. Applies an upgrade of passive defense to your intelligence agency, and adds the Department of State Security, which grants us 5% stability and 1 operative slot. So I'm going to go with that. We've got 1 land doctrine or land warfare facility. We're going to go with Nikola Dukov there. And then for all of our units, we're going to put them all in 1 army. We start off with 94, and then we're going to split these up as these 16 are a little bit better. They start with motorized recon and artillery and engineers. So these are going to be your like shock troopers for sure. These divisions I think are just regular. Oh, they're not 21 combat width. They're 19 combat width. So, but they do have support artillery, so they're not bad units at all. Now we'll just split these off into 2 separate units. Then we have cavalry, which is a big part of Russia in this game because of the Cossacks. Then we have 8 I guess you would consider them tank divisions, but 1 paratroop brigade, which I'm not going to keep this paratroop brigade. I'm actually going to change them into just a regular unit. Probably just do just one of the cheaper divisions. And we'll throw him in that one. So you got a full 24. And then we'll delete this one, which is just an MP division. Or I'm sorry, we're not going to delete them. We're just going to switch them over. And then our 3 mountaineers can be added to our shock troopers there. So that's kind of how our army is going to set up for right now. We will, of course, change it later on. And we'll start choosing out generals later on as well. We start off with 5 field marshals and a lot of generals. But each general has a different political faction that it goes through. So these are different monarchist officers, but these are like Republican officers. So if you become monarchist, you lose a lot of units, or a lot of generals. So you just have to kind of pay attention. And I always try to decide on what I'm going to be building. Because my starting generals are always the generals I use throughout the game. So, the improved light tank. I don't know why I'm building basic light tanks, but the BT7 is a small improved cannon with a 2-man turret, and the T26 RT is the same, but it has a radio. This one did not. This one had an additional machine gun. So really. And truthfully, I would actually probably like the basic one a little bit better, but we are going to focus on the improved light tank for right now, and get rid of this one. Though, in honesty, we can build the same ones. They're going to go to the same factories and stuff. I don't need any interwar medium tanks right now. I'm not using any of them. Excuse me. And then we need more vehicles, which we will need to trade for some rubber right off the rip. We'll get them from the Kingdom of Siam. Alright, and then we'll start off. We'll kick up at 4 speed. That's where I always sit on, is 4 speed. And we will start off. I'm not going to focus on the Navy just for right now. And then, of course, our airplanes. So, 2 years ago, in June of 1934, President Boris Viktorovich Savinkov was elected to serve as the 5th president of the Russian Democratic Federative Republic. The election, which was led to a Duma majority of the far-right coalition of the CZRS and SOR, was the consequence of 2 decades of disappointment and instability. The last nail in the coffin of President Vasily Melikov was opening negotiations with the Reichsbank over a loan meant to fund another set of land reforms, as the SZRS was promising, but it meant little as the SZRS had an endless supply of insults to hurl towards the Cadet SR coalition. German lackeys, softists on socialists, failing peasant living standards, and a humiliation of Russia after military adventurums in the Far East. The moon in 1934 was resigned and fearful. A month before elections, a member of the SZRS combat squads had shot Nicholas Silvolod Verlin or Veverlod Verlin for treason, and hundreds of left-wing activists and politicians were targeted as part of a campaign of fear. While law enforcement seemed slow and ineffective at reacting, the SZRS volunteers have been guarding voting booths, especially in rural regions. Only the SOR's campaigning was left unhindered and even supported through tactical electoral alliances. And in this environment of fear, many old progressives were pushed to quit out of pressure and fear over their lives. Many voters did not dare to go out, fearing violence. The voter turnout was low, and it saw the old two titans, the cadets and SRs, almost halved in their seats counts, as SERs became the undisputed largest party. A month later, the combined votes of the SERS and SOR brought President Savinkov into office. And so it begins, a standoff in the state council. Interesting. Standoff in the State Council. The short winter day is already ending in the Grand Kremlin Palace in Moscow, where debates in the upper house of the Duma, the State Council, have been ongoing all day. The thin majority behind the chairman of the State Council, Viktor Chernov, had voted down the law on protection of the state initiated by Dikov government and already passed by the state's Duma. Much of the legal text has already been muddled into vague rhetoric on empowering the police forces to better hunt enemies of the Republic, but the opposition bloc held firm and refused to accept it with any amendments. Chernov had decried the law as something out of the police state and not one fit for a democratic republic. Stubborn resistance by both the parliamentary opposition and the Supreme Court had again successfully opposed the SZRS. The free media affiliated mainly with the SZRS has begun to spew violent hatred against Chernov and his allies. The loudest rhetoric came from the chairman of the State Duma, Vasily Shulgin, who widely criticized Duma's speech, denounced the opposition bloc as crypto-communists and sellouts to the Jewish and German business interests. As usual, gets the last line. Observer writes to the Legation Council. I'm not going. If you guys would like to read this, this goes on for any of the countries that have observer rights over in the Legation Council. All this is stating is that we get to see. We don't have the power to vote. We're just on the council to see what happens in the legation city. So we deserve a voice in Shanghai. We're just saying that we would like to be on the table to talk. So, and if you come in here, they have different focuses they can do. They can do the open door, which is to follow what they are doing now, the Western tool, which supports Germany, or the gateway to the east, which supports the Japanese. So that's different for them. I did not look right when we started off with the Philippines because they did get a new focus tree. They actually got a pretty good focus tree. This looks like the American path. This also looks like kind of the follow, or I'm sorry, this doesn't look like the American path. This looks like the independence path, the American path, the social path, the communist path, and the market liberal path there. Okay, yeah, that's really nice actually for them. They think they had like a standard focus tree for the longest time. And of course, you have the Princely Confederations, the Bharatiya People's Republic, and the Dominion of India. If you can swing it, you can get these guys as an ally. It's somewhere in here. It's here. Join the Moscow Accord. If you can get them, usually they'll join the Co-Prosperity Sphere. But they do start out aligned with the Dominion of India, which is something different than what it used to be. So. They never started out aligned as in an alliance. So, other than that, I know I'm kind of getting sidetracked a little bit, but a lot has changed since I've been gone. So, it's very interesting to see all the changes. The last line: the two men had been discussing the situation for the best part of the evening at Chernov's home in Alexeyevsky, Moscow. Viktor Mikhailovich, lighting the seventh cigar of the stressful evening, seemed to be losing hope. The Ocarina raid on party offices in Petrograd had led to the arrest of Kemkov and many other northern SRs. The rank of the opposition were dwindling day by day under immense pressure from the reactionary hydras strangling the Republic. It only seemed like a matter of time until Savinkov would gain absolute power. While drinking with Viktor, Vladimir Reichheiter, an old friend and trusted party secretary, had tried to come up with a way to impeach the president, but the opposition simply did not have the numbers. He had even suggested negotiating with the left for a general strike, even if it ended bloody like the 1934 protests, and discreetly contacted ex-general Vasily Boldarev, who was living in Berlin. Even in the confines of his own home, the gramophones was playing loudly to drown the discussion for any potential listeners. Chernov spoke briefly of an officer from Kornilov's staff who had discreetly met with him and proposed a military coup, or rather informed Chernov that if Kornilov goes through with it, he expects full support of the opposition. The meeting had ended with no real agreement or trust on either side. Vladimir Nikolaevich was thoroughly opposed to the idea, but admitted that it might be the only way the Republic can be saved at this point. Even so, it wouldn't matter if all that would happen is a simple exchanging one tyrant for another. Not that they had the luxury of choice. Perhaps there's still time. The man in the Kremlin. We are low on convoys. So going to prioritize these. And once these are done, I'm just gonna move that up like that. Okay. Something I usually do, which I haven't done just yet, but I'm about to, is I'll take my entire Air Force, starting out. And I'll show you what I do here in a second. The man in the Kremlin. The president was working late. His office was luxuriously decorated and classicist, with portraits of earlier presidents replaced by the father of Narodinks. Boris Viktorovich reacted little as he was listening to the chairman minister Alexander Dykhoff's explanation of secretary's situation. The Ocarina had uncovered a rumor of possible conspiracy in the military, and despite director of security Klipkov's best efforts, nothing concrete was yet found. Boris Viktorovich lit another cigarette and briefly remembered how the two of them had set up their temporary headquarters of the SZRS in a half-collapsed farmhouse in Shinkursk during the Civil War. He thought of a moment and ordered increased surveillance of the Stavka and especially of the Mongolian, which Alexander Arkadovich looked to mean Kornilov himself. The president understood that the equation was dangerous. The longer Chernov and Nabokov slowed down the consolidation of power, the more disloyal elements in the military have to plot, and many in the army simply despised the Sobotniks as an unwashed mob expected from the aristocratic morons who do not know life outside of barracks and palaces. But their time will eventually come. For now, the priority is to destroy and exterminate every threat on the way to absolute power. And fate is on our side. Skits events 3 shots in the chest. If you guys do not want me to read those, I don't have to read those. We started it in the old campaign, so I just figured I'd start reading them. But if you don't want these all read, we can just skip through it and get to the actual gameplay. But 3 shots in the chest. At 16:30 yesterday, 3 shots from a Korovin pistol was heard that echoed across Russia. Viktor Chernov, the head of the Socialist Revolutionary Party and the chairman of the State Council, was assassinated at the hands of a fellow party member. Nikolai Leonidov, a low-ranking SR functionary, shot Chernov in the chest 3 times at the stairs of the Grand Kremlin Palace, killing him instantly. The killer was wounded by police before he could commit suicide and quickly was transported to the hospital under heavy guard. The opposition bloc was thrown into disarray by the news. The next day, the deputy chairman, Cadet Nikolai Platonovich Vakar, took the reins, but his position was immediately under fire. He'd been initially chosen to compromise with the right wing of the opposition bloc, with no one expecting Vakar to actually become chairman. Now he's lauded as unacceptable, as an unacceptably right wing and consolidated towards the SZRS by the Socialist Revolutionaries and Radical Democrats, who have demanded their own man as Vakar's deputy. It's become clear that Chernov was the linchpin of the opposition in the State Council, and it had been his skill that had kept the opposition unflinching. Though he had once faced accusations of being too left for his own good, Chernov was in the bedrock of the Socialist Revolutionaries, as well as one of the leading architects of the Russian Republic as it exists today. With Chernov's corpse still not yet cold, some members of the opposition have already made public statements that indirectly accuse the SCRS, if not necessarily President Savikov himself, of being behind the killing, or at least allowing it through lax security. We lose 10% stability. Chernov dies, and we appoint Alexander Dykhoff Durentel, which the effects 5% political power gain, plus 20% political party stability modifier, and negative 40% political advisor costs. Nien Neplevet. Sorry, I'm going to butcher every Russian word that comes up on the screen, but I'm going to at least try to do them. So, all right, the total was charter. Oh, I didn't read that. That happens through all the games. Again, these are just information telling you that the communists, or I'm sorry, the syndicalists, have put out a charter about what they stand for and everything. Collapse of the opposition bloc. With Chernov's death, the opposition blocks has begun to disintegrate faster than journalists can write about. It's an extraordinary session of the SR Central Committee. The left wing was outvoted, and Vladimir Rechter, former party secretary and Chernov's second-hand man, was elected as the new chairman of the party as a compromised candidate who managed to satisfy no one. Despite Richter's insistence on continuing Chernov work, he has little trust in the left. After the vote, Maria Spiridonova of the left faction commented that the so-called Socialist Revolutionary Party has lost any connection with socialism and furthermore with revolution, having indicated nothing but old reactionaries who lost their ideals 15 years ago. Afterwards, the divide between the left and the right, which Chernov had only been able to bridge with great skill, split wide open, and those loyal to Spiridonova denounced the parliamentary path, which had failed, and would instead move into active resistance with anyone who still has the spirit of the socialist revolutionaries in their chest. Seeing the writing on the wall, the more right-wing members of the opposition bloc are now eyeing a compromise with the SZRS. The first one to defect was Nikolai Trubetskoy from the VPP, who declared the opposition bloc dead and called on the conservatives to instead make peace with the more moderate forces of the SZRS. In mere days, the bloc has dissolved into chaos, fear, and repression. Now little stands between Savinkov and his vision of a third Russia. The dominoes fall. We lose 4% stability, replaces entrenched opposition with the death throes of the Republic, which we gain plus 0.60, so we're at negative 0.2 now. Changes to the popularity of social liberalism, minus 5%. The Radical Socialist Party is now called the Party of Left Socialist Revolutionaries, which is Partie Levikia Soclavstov Revolutionarov. And then Maria Spiridonova becomes leader of the Radical Socialists, and she has the Matushka, which is a 5% recruitable population factor, daily compliance gain plus 0.01%, and defense against major countries plus 5%. And Vladimir Richter becomes leader of the Social Liberal Party. It's a lot to read, which is fine. So what I do starting out, most definitely with these kind of rough planes that we're producing, the basic airframe, not horrible, right? I don't want to diss it. The inner close air support is not great, and the basic medium airframe is also not great, but we're not going to immediately throw it out right away. What we will do, though, is come up into our international market, sell equipment, add equipment to the market, and then anything that is in here that is a plane-wise, I'm going to sell. And the reason I'm doing this is just to boost my economy. I'm just trying to get it stronger starting out. Most of these are interwar. If they're not, like I have 2 of those mediums, and I'm exclusively not caring about most of these. I don't have any naval aircraft carriers or anything like that, so we're gonna crank them up to high. The more construction you can get, the better, starting off at the beginning, and that will not put us back very far. Edward VIII is crowned as King of Great Britain. George V, the last King of Great Britain and Ireland, has ruled the home islands themselves, who passed away while in exile in Canada, and his son has taken over. Interesting. The Leonidov investigation. Despite the doctor's best attempt at the Kremlin hospital, Chernov's assailant died of a catastrophic internal bleeding before he could be interrogated. Surprisingly, the investigation was quickly taken over by the 5th Department of the General Staff of the War Ministry, that is, the military intelligence under General Field Marshal Kornilov's command, citing the matter as one of national security. Unfortunately, the department's investigation thus far has uncovered little hard evidence. A Petrograd native, the 34-year-old Leonidov joined the SRs in the early 1920s, but has otherwise struggled to hold down a job and lives estranged from his wife. More ominously, investigators have uncovered that Leonidov met with a German consul only a few days prior to killing Chernov. Attempts to meet with the consul proved fruitless, as he evidently left to an unannounced visit to Riga the day after the chairman's assassination. They're possibly giving credence to the idea of a foreign conspiracy. The investigation lacks any proof connecting Leonidov to Germany or any possible motives of why Germany would want Chernov dead. In any case, the opposition is becoming increasingly vocal in its demand for progress for the investigation, while the general public is growing more convinced that the government had something to do with Chernov's murder. What is Kornilov meddling in? Good question. So they're going to start buying them. I immediately just turn on auto accept. And the good thing is, if all of these don't buy or these don't sell, I just get them back. So, shots fired by Kerensky. Alexander Kerensky, former leader of the Russian Provisional Government until its overthrow began the Russian Civil War, and held by many as responsible for it, has leveled charges against the Savinkov government that it is dragging Russia on the road back to tyranny, destroying all the progress Russia had made since its victory over the Bolsheviks. The former president has leveled particular criticism on the government's decision to hand the investigation of Chernov's killing to General Kornilov, a move that Kerensky has cautiously declared as like putting a fox in charge of a hen coop. As for Savinkov himself, Kerensky did not spare his former minister of war either, stating that this serpent will strangle Russians' freedom today in a manner he failed to do with Kornilov 20 years ago. This isn't the first time that Kerensky's commented on Russian affairs, but as the years have passed, so has the shock value of his pronouncements. Having alienated even his most fervent supporters in Russia during his brief stint as the country's helm, many in Kerensky's motherland simply see him as a washed-out relic, banging off his past achievements to earn speaking tours off credulous Westerners. Kerensky is currently living in exile in New York City, while his most recent batch of inflammatory statements have made the rounds in American and European newspapers. They have all been completely ignored within Russia itself. Nice try, old man. Old Kerensky. We got our spy. We're going to do Dmitry Bistrolostov for the well-groomed and the seducer. Both very good traits. We're selling Portugal, the French Republic, Hungary, and the legation cities. Perfect. This will give us another operative slot, which is quite nice for us. So, Afghanistan declares war on the Dominion of India. Consolidate the security forces. We get passive defense now. Black Monday. On the 3rd of February 1936, the Berlin Stock Exchange stopped sinking. It plunged, fueled by the instability of the market. Panic selling erupted as soon as the stock market opened on Monday morning. It took well into the night for the teleprinters to stop sputtering out the results of what became known as Black Monday. When the results had been analyzed, it was clear that the situation had only gotten worse. The shock of this unprecedented economic catastrophe will no doubt be felt all over the entire world. The German Golden Age has ended, for now at least. World tensions increased by 4. And the 5th Anglo-Afghani War, if you would like to read through that, that's just talking about why they're going to war. They've been to war before quite a few times, so, well, 5 times. And then who cares about Afghanistan? We get 1 increase in world tension. So, well, with us finally done with that one, we can actually start moving around to do these different focuses. So we're going to do control the Supreme Court. So how we get rid of Savinkov here is in here. In here, it'll tell you his reign may use special tactics and propaganda to sway the citizenry to its side, but ruling over Russia would be impossible without general support or at least passive acceptance from a large portion of society. In order to maintain power and lead the country to greatness, Savinkov must keep the military and population satisfied with the SZRS rule and deliver on the president's many promises. So if you have 8 or more military anger, that will lead to a military coup. If you have 8 or more popular anger, that will lead to a revolution and overthrowing the president, the result of which depends if the military anger is 5 or above. That's only possible before 1938. So we have 2 years to overthrow him. Right now it's at 2 and 2, which is wary. So I let him stay in power, and I'm going to tell you why here in a little bit when it comes up, when I can show you guys why. I let him stay in power for roughly a year, and then I will try to get rid of him to actually form the empire. So, a socialist conspiracy. With additional investigations into Lenindov's background, the Fifth Department has come up with a more convincing theory. Nikolai Lenindov was a socialist radical, and the murder was politically motivated. To back his claims, Kornilov pointed to a recently uncovered evidence of Lenindov's connection with a radical maximalist offshoot of the Socialist Revolutionaries, who are alleged to have plotted Chernov's assassination due to the chairman's treasonous cooperation with the bourgeoisie and reactionary parties. In fact, if Lenindov committed his act under orders from the left socialist revolutionaries, it would grant a justification for immediate action, mass arrest for party leadership, banning of the party organs, and eradicating the conspiracy before they can threaten the safety of the president himself. Kornilov has proposed preventative actions against the conspiracy before it can strike again, and has requested the president to activate Article 17 of the Constitution, giving the War Ministry extraordinary powers to arrest any person who may be involved, with the power to crack down on any possible disorder that may follow. Let's not be hasty, lose 1 stability. And the Berlin stock market crash. Since the Berlin stock exchange first precipitous plunge weeks ago, businessmen and market analysis in Russia have observed the aftershocks of Black Monday and silent horror. The flood of bankruptcies, inflation, and general panic have surged across middle Europa and struck Russia like a runaway train. In an eerie repetition of events 10 years ago, the value of the ruble has plummeted in sympathy with the German mark, wiping out fortunes overnight. Given Russia's close economic ties with Germany under the Vilnius Agreement, Russian industries and business are collapsing into insolvency almost in lockstep with their German counterparts across Russia. Every new day brings with it another grim tally of lost jobs and livelihoods. Adds Black Monday, which grants consumer factory goods 30%, stability negative 15%, factory output negative 45%. German economic influence changes by -1, and popular anger changes by +1. So, oh no. What it's talking about there with the German stranglehold, or the stranglehold of German economics. So their current influence level is 7, and you can do the Vilnius Agreement in our focus tree, and that will allow us to start to take back some of the things from Germany that is economically tied to our country. And then once you get rid of it, when you go to war with Germany, if you still have some of if they still have control over some of your economy, you get a negative debuff. So we just have to pay attention to that. So we're going to do control the Supreme Court, and then we're going to jump over and establish the VES, the Voskod program, the Savinkov Constitution, and then we are going to do Orthodox syndicalists elected in France. We're going to do this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 over here, then the rest will be focused everywhere else. So the Austrian Empire withdraws from Italy, talking about the Italian Republic's no longer within the Austrians' realm of influence. Or a military conspiracy. While Kornilov's theory of a socialist conspiracy does fit the typical Sobotnik narrative, who would give the government another reason to crack down on their leftist opposition or opponents, the Ukraine Directive Flagrant Klipkov has urged caution to the president. The Department of State Security Protection has been conducting their own shadow investigation and are increasingly suspicious of Kornilov's intentions. Recent reports from the Akarana regarding Lenindov's background have brought up several irregularities. No name was Sturfter. It instead appears that Lenindov has several relatives in the headquarters of the Petrograd military district. Moreover, the Akarana has uncovered a series of staff and garrison reshuffles in Petrograd and Moscow that the army has largely neglected to mention. These could be simple coincidences or minor background work to facilitate the killing of Chernov, but some whisper that Kornilov may have greater ambitions than just helping Savinkov eliminate his rivals. A disturbing theory, lose 1% stability. The illusion of a Qing hegemony, or Qing hegemony. The illusion of Qing hegemony shatters. The facade of Chinese unity, having held together for nearly a decade, has begun to crumble. World tension increased by 2, and all of these countries will pop out and be their own. There he goes. And now the Civil War will begin over here. As chairman of the State Council, or Chernov's funeral. As chairman of the State Council, Viktor Chernov is entitled to a funeral with state honors. The idea is, of course, not particularly liked by many of the SZRS. Was intended to be a rather quick and small state funeral, is quickly threatening to become a great mass event as more and more people wish to pay their respect to the fallen legend. There is a distinct lack of military representation at the funeral. The only ministers present was Ivan Ilyin from the SOR, who proceeded to pay Chernov lukewarm respects for his long careers as a statesman. But from the opposition, there are hundreds, some having come all the way from Petrograd or Samara just to pay their respect. And as the coffin's being carried, someone started to sing the first notes of Radin's Comrades, Let's Bravely March. The crowds continue. Comrades, let's bravely march. Our resolve gets stronger in the struggle. We will fight our way towards liberty. After the funeral, the crowd of thousands gathered in the summer garden in the front of the Petrograd court chambers. Maria Spiridonova held a fierce speech demanding justice for Chernov. While the protesters were shouting down with Kornilov, it was obvious that their dissent had also included the sitting president. The event had quickly turned into an anti-government rally led by socialist revolutionaries and a public show of force by the opposition. Break it up and arrest the agitator, or it's just words. really, you kind of hate to lose the stability just for the social radicals, right? Or social democracy, which is these guys. Yeah. Um. So I'm just gonna say, uh, it's just words. I'm gonna lose that 2% stability, but we'll get rid of the social democrat. Or actually, it's just words because once we overthrow him, these all can go down. Yeah, I'm not gonna lose the or I will lose the stability. Sorry, if they get too powerful, they will take over power. So we want to keep them in check. So let's see which path is Germany going. Oh, Siam's no longer transporting rubber, so I will buy it from the Princely Federation. Riots in southern Russia. Chernov's assassination has whipped Moscow and Petrograd into a frenzy, but they are hardly the only cities in Russia facing unrest in the wake of the chairman's ultimate end. Rumors have spread like firestorm across southern Russia, whispering that Chernov's death is the only first step in the Subonsk coup d'etat, which began as a factory strikes in cities like Rostov-on-Don, Yekaterinodar, and Stavropol, among others, have escalated dramatically in the past few days. Starting ostensibly as protests against the SZRS, the strikes have quickly drawn in other elements of the region's non-Kazakh population, referred to as Inogordini or outsiders. The non-Kazakh Slavs now form upward of half the populations in the territory of the Don, Kuban, Terek, and Astrakhan Kazakh host. Despite this, Ingordorni are largely excluded from politics and owning land. They instead work in roles considered beneath the Kazakhs' dignity as military states, such as factory workers, farmhands, or the urban bourgeoisie. This discrimination has been justified on grounds that the Cossacks, like many mountaineer people, are legally considered indigenous in the region, and their autonomy has been guaranteed under the federal constitution. Nevertheless, this state of affair has led to profound resentments among the Inogrondini, which rapidly led to the recent strikes devolving into bloody riots. The Cossacks' response had seen crowds harshly dispersed with cavalry charges and swinging whips. The Inogrondini have accused the Cossacks of police brutality, while the Cossacks have shot back that only intervened when the mobs began targeting Kazakh homes and families. Both groups have petitioned that the federal government recognize the legitimacy of their actions. The Kazakhs can handle their own affairs. We lose 2% stability. Change of population to national populism -5%. Popular anger changes about 1%. Or we can do order the Kazakhs to stop. No need to provoke the opposition. We're going to do the Kazakhs can handle their own affair for the loss of national populism. Change of popular anger, but we keep a little bit more stability. We will lose a lot of stability during this. Though I think I lost 5% anyway. So I was hoping to go with the 2. Knight to c6. As an old gambler, Boris Viktorovich decided to play Kornilov's games. He's made a public appearance and commented to the press there may be a conspiracy afoot against the government and that several army officers have already been arrested on suspicion of involvement in Chernov's death. Such a public blaming of the army is nothing short of a declaration of war on Kornilov, an invitation to duel of wills. It was, however, shocked and seized by many members of the army, both among the rank and file and those involved in the assassination plot. The memories of Bordalev's 1929 push are strong, and now the government has made it clear that they will oppose any threats to the Republic from the armed forces. The past few days have seen communications between Savinkov and Kornilov break down entirely. The supreme commander of the army has remained silent in the headquarters of the Moscow military department or district, surrounded by forces loyal to him, and avoided any response to the accusations of the president. Not giving Kornilov any more time to plot, President Savinkov ordered him to arrive in person at a meeting of the War Ministry in the Kremlin. Your move, Vladimir Gorgievich. Mongolia is still under Roman Ergen Sternberg, and hopefully it stays under him. He's not a Russian puppet, but he is a Russian general. The Kornilov push cornered, the dog was forced to act. Too much surprise, Kornilov agreed to come to the Kremlin personally. After leaving the headquarters of the military district, Kornilov surpassed his intended government escort and instead headed directly to the Kremlin. He was accompanied by a company of Junker cadets from the Alexeyev and Dukhanin military academies as an obvious pre-planned move. Upon arriving, he ordered the Special Purpose Battalion tasked with guarding the Kremlin to secure the Senate Palace and ensure the safety of the president with the support of the cadets. However, Kornilov's hubris proved to be his downfall, as much of it was Bordalev's before him. When only a portion of the security battalion agreed to follow his orders, fierce fighting soon broke out within the Kremlin as Kornilov's force tried to arrest the soldiers who refused to obey orders, claiming they were loyal only to Savinkov. Much of the Kremlin's complex fell rapidly, smashing through the gates of the Spasskaya Tower. Kornilov's troops reached the Senate Palace, where they were finally stopped by dogged loyalist resistance by the MVD troops long enough for reinforcements to arrive from the capital's garrison. It was said that Savinkov followed the fighting within the Kremlin with glee on his face, but it was more plausible that he had already left the complex by this point. Kornilov himself was wounded by a grenade and taken prisoner in the Senate Palace, while the rest of the mutineers were shot on the spot. Simultaneously, the Okhrana moved to arrest the traitors within the military district headquarters. Now the uncrowned military dictator of Russia is rotting in the Putskrovska prison, and no official statement of the events of the night have been given. What will befall them? Only death to traitors, lose 15% stability, and negative 50%, 15% stability, and lose army experience by 50, or allow him a trial and retirement. So he is a 8 attack general or field marshal. He is a Republican officer, legacy of the whites. If you allow him a trial and a retirement, he can come back later in the Civil War, if I'm not mistaken, and he can rejoin the military. Now, if I was Savinkov, I would probably just kill Kornilov right off the rip. But where I'm going to try to restore the Russian Empire, I'm going to allow him a trial and a retirement. We get the same debuff, so we're going back to probably going to negative stability, but we'll allow him a trial and a retirement. Got another operative. We're going to go with Nikanor Kudnutskov, commando and infiltrator. The counterintelligence is really nice, but we're just going to go with him. We are going to start... was going to try to destabilize some of these regions, but you're Social Democrat, and you'll probably stay Social Democrat. Unemployment spike. People at the highest risk of being laid off are those on the payroll of the German-owned corporations, but the effect has obviously spread to more patriotic companies. It's not only a matter of employers closing down their businesses, but also losing their contracts and customers. Many industrial sectors in Russia still rely on German trade, despite attempts towards self-sufficiency by the SZRS. Economic reforms over the past year. As orders dry up, the workers lose their job, and fewer people have money to spare. The demands for goods crumbles lower and lower. Depressing, modifies Black Monday by consumer goods plus 10%, stability minus 5%, and factory output negative 15%. Ouch. Trial of the misguided general. After several tense meetings between Kornilov and Savinkov, the former finally relented to admit his guilt on the condition that he, and more importantly his subordinates, be spared. Presented before the Moscow court chambers through a detailed series of reports and witness statements, the story had emerged as one of fundamental and catastrophic misunderstandings. Kornilov, through intelligence gathered by the army, was convinced of Chernov's role in a wide-range conspiracy against the government, which includes members of the SVRS itself. Acting on his own initiative, Kornilov had Chernov arrested or assassinated. Fearing that Chernov's allies in the government remained at large, Kornilov believed that the state was compromised and thus failed to coordinate effectively. The ensuing battle in the Kremlin was in fact a botched attempt to safeguard Savinkov against an attempt on his life. Those actions can be perceived as high treason and even a possible putsch. The court found insufficient evidence to meet the high bar needed for a charge of treason. Nonetheless, Kornilov had been stripped of his post of Minister of War and pensioned off, symbolically retiring his rank solely out of respect for his past services. His accomplices have similarly been drummed out of the military, but have otherwise been unpunished due to their belief that they were serving Russia. Kornilov, speaking with the press from the court steps, had expressed his remorse that he led faithful soldiers astray, but maintains the belief that Chernov was acting to imperial Russia. Their actual verdict and Kornilov's statements have varied. The opposition is apologetic that Kornilov has escaped justice despite attempting to Chernov's murder, and a large portion of the public is deeply uncomfortable that a simple miscommunication and vigilantism has led to so much bloodshed. The military, in turn, is very relieved to learn that the leader was simply wrong, but acted with noble intentions. We gain 2 stability, and we retire Kornilov and keep his Daka under watch. Replacing Kornilov, this is where we will go into getting the monarchist path down. Having commanded the Russian army since the final days of the Great War, Lever Kornilov's absence has left a vacancy that no small amount of effort can hope to fill. The army's move is fractious, and we must tread carefully with the choice of successor. The army is largely divided between 2 men, Anton Denkin and Pyotr Wrangel, both of whom were among Kornilov's closest associates. Sergei Markov was briefly considered, but he quickly issued a statement declaring both a lack of interest in the position and a conflict of interest due to his close personal friendship with both of their candidates. Unfortunately, such a friendship cannot be said to exist between Denkin and Wrangel. Denkin, a son of peasants, earned his general epaulettes through the unimpeachable courage and tenacity of an elite infantryman and artillery officer. Disdainful of politics, Denkin had nonetheless come to accept his place as the army's highest-ranking Republican, though he is reportedly still not becoming comfortable enough with politicians to shake Savinkov's hand. Wrangel, meanwhile, hails from an ancient family of Baltic German nobility, and though his merits are beyond question, he is far more comfortable with intrigue and court politics than the gruff Denkin, or Denikin. Wrangel's past service as a cavalry officer in the infamous Monarchist Guard Corps, but as a general, he has instead dedicated himself to elevating the capabilities of Russia's humble conscript with a much more academic approach towards military affairs. So, if you want to go, the Empire will be destroyed if the military angle boils over, or the Republic will be destroyed if the military angle boils over. So this is when you get your choice. In reality, I like Anton Denkin as a leader more than I like Peter Wrangel. But to go down the path we want to go, we will go with Peter Wrangel. So he will serve his country well. We appoint advisor Peter Wrangel with the effects of army experience gain plus 0.30 daily, supply consumption negative 5%, and max planning factor plus 10%. Gains army after Kornilov, which the army experience gain is negative 0.50 daily, and division organization negative 10% for 180 days. So Peter Wrangel will serve this country well. So the reason why I keep him in power for this amount of time is once you establish the VES, you can start, the Volshkid program, you can start doing improvements to the economy that actually build the state back a lot better. And then you can then jump over to the Empire and not have much of a discrepancy with it. So Wrangel's pleas, flashing camera bulbs have captured a historic moment in the Russian Army's history as President Savinkov and General Field Marshal Wrangel co-signed a comprehensive reform package aimed at revitalizing Russian capacity to wage war. Though the exact details have been withheld as a concessions to secrecy, Savinkov and Wrangel have both discussed their intent to prepare the brave Russian everyman, the front of Kyiv, and factory workers alike for tomorrow's war. While some within the army question the wisdom of such a glacial approach to war making, the thought of stout defense and improved conditions have proved very popular with the Russian public. In a closed meeting with Stavka, General Field Marshal Denkin is reported to have delivered a scathing critique of Savinkov's chosen military policy directed to the president's face. Denkin, channeling the same professionalism and renowned bluntness that he had once used with Kerensky, did not mince his words when it came time to decry the idiocracy and cowardice that Savinkov was condemning the army to by following Wrangel's archaic leads. Excellent. And Wrangel's not a bad general or field marshal. He's a 2-2-4-2, so Denkin is better. Denkin is a 6-3-2-1, and even Markov is better. But Wrangel's who we have to go with, and we'll put him as our field marshal so he can start gaining experience. Control of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, though it may be true that Savinkov's conversation with Vladimir Nabokov, the Supreme Court chairman, has been less verbally explosive than those with the late Chernov. They prove no less frustrating for the SZRS growing ambition. The Supreme Court of the Russian Republic is not only the highest court of appeals, but also the arbiter of Russian constitution, and its 18 judges have proven to be a constant thorn in the side of political radicalism. The Sobodnik's pride has arguably still not recovered from Nabokov's ruling on the question of the combat squad's legal status in 1935, which struck down Savinkov's attempt to pardon many of his foot soldiers currently languishing in prisons on charges of terrorism. Chernov's passing, however, opened an avenue for finally ridding Russia of Nabokov's obstructionism. Savinkov and his cohort in the Duma have nurtured a vote of no confidence against the Supreme Court for more than a year, but its execution was continually frustrated by a lack of support in the State Council. Now, with the State Council likewise in SZRS SOR hands, the non-confidence vote and a paired legal reform bill passed both legislative house without incident. The slate of the Supreme Court, Nabokov included, has been wiped out clean in a wave of firing and forced retirements. The few guards judged harmlessly enough to remain will be rendered powerless in a new Supreme Court that not only has grown to 24 seats, but also has been stacked with a reliable bench of SCRS-approved appointees led by the vulnerable Boris Yeshevletsev, the legal expert of the SRVS. And now everything is constitutional, gained 50 political power. Restoration of democracy in Australasia. The Australasian Confederation has been under the authority rule of the Governor-General William Birdwood since the British invocation of the emergency protocols in 1924, considered by many in the nation to have been a heavy-handed response to the Melbourne Commune Syndicalist uprising. Birdwood finally relented to calls for an open election, leading to John Curtin's Labour Party achieving a slim majority in Parliament. Interesting. Plutocaro Elias Calles proclaims Maximato, so Mexico will stay totalist, or they'll stay communist is what I meant. Mexican democracy died as it lived. and we will start doing. Really, we don't have to worry about that. Just for the political power, I'd go down there. But if we want to jump, we'll do VES and then the Voshcud program, and then labor conscription is useful for the Voshkid program. So these two, and then we can start working on improving Black Monday, and then we can also form our faction. We also do need to worry about coming down here and doing the military as well. So a lot to do, a lot to start off with in this campaign. Nicholas Yegales, elected chairman of the TUC, a Welsh man. The Autonomists. The death of Pius the 11th. Pope has died. Russia is Orthodoxy, not Catholic, so not much to them. So they chose this one. Or I'm sorry. It's this one. Devolution. These guys are ready for a upgrade to their political tree. The French have a pretty big one, but the British, the Union of Britain does not. So, the state of security under the 1922 Constitution, Article 36 grants the President of the Republic power to declare a state of security with the approval of the State Council. Seven-Cost-Lamb's attempt in 1935 to use the state of security was curbed as it did not pass the State Council, and was followed by Kornilov's warning that if the Constitution is ignored, the military has no option but to act. Based on the current instability, a new state of security has been declared, and the unsurprising it passed in the State Council where the opposition is broken. The state of security, Okronie Polonie, was originally added to the Constitution due to the demands of the army, who saw the needs for dictatorial powers in case of a communist uprising or similar public unrest. It was used to give post facto justification for Admiral Kolchak's wartime dictatorship, and has been used in 1929 and then again in 1932 to quell Tamboff's unrest, in practice having little to no restrictions. The state of security allows executive decrees to bypass almost all constitutional guarantees concerning personal and political freedoms, property, and judicial rights. The only provision for ending such a state is a vote by the State Council. Immediately after the decree, Chairman Minister Zhukov announced the suspension of various civil rights, empowering the police, and a great expansion of powers of law enforcement and those seeking to destabilize our great Russia. This is but the first step. Gain 5% stability. Gallo seizes control of Ecuador. Seems Cueto's liberalism just couldn't last. Also, I think the United States Civil War has changed just a hair. They said they haven't updated a lot of it. So I don't think a whole lot of it has been updated. But this is a new guy. It's not Huber anymore. So Pius the 12th. Sorry, the 12th is elected as a new pope. Good luck, Your Holiness. He is the paternal autocrat pope. Pius the 12th. The Ninth International Congress. This is where all of the socialists will meet to speak about things that are going on with socialism in the world, or an interesting development, if you'd like to read through that. Those newspapers are things that happen all the time, or every time we go through this. Anytime you play a playthrough, you'll get that. So, stability, political power. He's not bad. It's a terror. Don't really need him. Or support. Reform Kazakh. Do have to be careful, because if you get some of these guys, at some point you might lose them. So he's actually really good. 5% political power gain, 5% stability, compliance, speed growth. We're going to save our political power for right now, because I'm going to try to jump over to early mobilization as soon as we can. It's holding on. Pedro Pablo Ramirez restores order in Argentina. Is this a victory for democracy? Probably not. We got Pedro Pablo Ramirez, who, if I'm not mistaken, will join the Reichspakt when he's able to. Shleshkolyov publishes his Unfought War with the great fanfare General Yakov. Shleshkyov has published the hotly anticipated sequels to his early magnum opus, Maneuver the Key to Victory, titled The Unfought War. Shlyov's new book builds on his earlier theories of armored warfare, emphasizing that the rapid changes in tank technology have already rendered most existing countermeasures to mass tanks obsolete. A prolific writer and professor at the officer school in Petrograd, Slyashov has made waves both for his writing and persona, dashing, irreverent, and hopelessly addicted to cocaine. What? Slyashov has become one of the most important, if controversial, members of what's become called the Markov School, an informal clique of reformist officers centered around the eponymous general, a firebrand proponent of mass mechanization. Slyashov grounds much of his prose on a lampooning of the tactics of his peers, a literary choice that's drawn no small amount of controversy. This book has nevertheless already become a bestseller in military circles, and it remains to be seen where Slyashov's sites will be seen next. Interesting, gain 5 army experience. Alright, with that, I'm going to end the episode here. If you're interested, well, right before I end it, if you use your political power, you can bring your popular military anger down. You do lose some political power and some nationalist populist support, which won't matter for us, and you do get stability for it. So we'll think about it when we come back. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.